You're listening to the Mid-Career GPS Podcast, episode 132. If you're considering leaving your job, I want to offer to leave with a lot of gratitude. This Thanksgiving week, I want to share a couple of stories to help you think about how to leave your job and why leaving with gratitude is your best move for you personally and professionally, even if you don't want to. So sit back, grab your favorite beverage. I'm going to share a few stories with you about a couple of jobs that I left with a lot of gratitude, but took some time to get some greater perspective on that as well. And there's a few stories in here that I have not shared with you before. I hope you enjoy. This is the Mid-Career GPS Podcast, and I'm your host, John Nerrell. I help mid-career professionals who feel stuck, undervalued, and underutilized show up to find a job they love or love the job they have using my proven 4-step formula. It's time to start building your mid-career GPS. Let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the podcast. On a personal note, I just want to share that over the weekend, my husband Richard and I celebrated our 6-year wedding anniversary. We had a great time celebrating, and most importantly, I am honored and blessed to have him by my side as we walk through this. As a sole business owner, it is one thing, but to have someone like him who is constantly being a champion, an advocate, and thought partner in all of this, I couldn't ask for anything or anyone more. So, Richard, I love you. Happy anniversary. I am so glad we are in this together, and you're the best. Thank you so much. All right. Today, as we get ready to go into Thanksgiving, and obviously I am extremely grateful for so many people and things in my life, I wanted to take this time to share with you some thoughts about leaving your job with gratitude. Now, there are a couple of defining moments and truly defining moments in my career where leaving with gratitude has served me, though I will admit I didn't always get there very, very quickly. So some of you know I'm a huge Golden Girls fan, so I will do the Sophia Petrillo reference. Picture it, Oakland, New Jersey, 2010. In fact, it was February of 2010 when I announced to my staff and my colleagues that I was going to be leaving to take a job working for the District of Columbia Public Schools. I'd worked in a great district. Being there for 14 years was wonderful. And I've shared before about my mid-career moment that I knew it was time for me to move on. I just hadn't figured out exactly what that move was going to be. Now, part of it was certainly for personal reasons. Richard and I had dated long distance for a couple of years, and his work is really centered here in the DC area. So it didn't make sense for him to give that up and move to New Jersey. But if I could find a job in DC, which I knew I would certainly come down. Now, I made this announcement to my staff in February, early part of March, for a couple of reasons. So one had to do with a transition plan. Many of you know that if you are leaving a job, you want to make sure you leave it in capable hands. And so we put transition plans in place to see what that work is going to look like, do any kind of training that needs to happen and skill that person up. Or if we're bringing someone in from the outside, that person has adequate time to be trained to be efficient in your role. But when you work in education, there are a thing such as school boards. And typically, when you are not planning to return, you want to give the district as much notification as possible. And where I work, that was typically around March. So once I had gotten word that I got the job for DC Public Schools, I really didn't have anything to hide at that point. I wanted to give as much time as possible. Now, in my situation, being a school teacher, I knew I would finish the school year. So I had that 4-month runway. For a lot of you in corporate type jobs, you typically wouldn't give that much time, especially if you are fearful that the company may turn around and say, great, we don't need you anymore. So for me, it made a lot of sense to make that announcement early. But there was one thing that I had in my back pocket that I was not going to give up. And that was this. We had a phenomenal teaching contract. And as co-president and vice president of my local education association for 10 years, there was no denying that we fought very hard to preserve a lot of things in our contract as much as we could. And one of them was this clause. If you had worked in the district for 7 years, you were allowed to take a year's leave without pay, and you could come back to your same job, your same role at the next spot on the salary guide as if nothing had ever happened. You just took a year off. We called it a sabbatical leave, personal leave, whatever it was. But I was able to take a year's leave, move, take my relationship to a completely different level, and start a new job. And if any of those things didn't work out, I was able to come back and go back to my old job. I am someone where if I do something, I go all in. And I didn't go into this new job or this next step in our relationship thinking that it was going to fail and I was going to turn around and come back. But I also wasn't willing to give up that benefit. Now, because of that, there were some challenges in terms of how we were going to fill that role and what that was going to look like. But one of the things that truly surprised me and admittedly hurt me was that I had colleagues and coworkers question my personal and professional decisions, and not in a way of being curious, but in a way of attacking me. I had somebody say to me that it was selfish of me to exercise this clause in the contract when I knew I wasn't going to be coming back. And I looked at them and I said, well, first of all, you're entitled to your opinion. Secondly, I'm entitled to a benefit within the contract just as much as you are. It's a safety net. And if I need to use it, I can use it. I'm not planning to use it, but I'm going to take that benefit. And honestly, it's none of your business. But see, there's sometimes when people feel comfortable enough that they will share certain things. I had people who I closely worked with attacked me for my relationship and simply said that I was going to get hurt, I was going to be left. Look, we don't know anything that happens when we take a leap of faith and we do something, be it personally or professionally. The only thing we know is that we have enough strength and tenacity that we're going to be okay no matter what happens. I felt very good in making this move, both personally and professionally. And obviously, it has all played out very, very well. But that's because we do the hard work. When you do the hard work, both personally and professionally, you do those things. And having a runway of 4 months to leave a job, that was hard. Because once it was announced in the board minutes that I was leaving, my students knew, families knew, and there were varying questions as to why I was going to move. I never really talked a whole lot about my personal situation with my students because I didn't believe it was appropriate. And so I certainly just said, I have a new job offer. I'm taking a job in Washington, D.C. And this was a great opportunity for me to level up professionally. There were no lies in that. But having your life be scrutinized, there is one thing when it comes from people who care about you, that you know it's coming from a place of love. There's another thing when it comes from a place of judgment and criticism from people who don't. And I just want to offer that as you think about leaving your job, it is about knowing and being so clear about what it is that you want to do and being grateful for the experiences you've had and being grateful for the experiences you are going to get. That was one of the things I loved about doing a job that was so different from my previous one. I went from a small district where I had no supervisory responsibilities. I had a team of 8 people that worked in my middle school. There were 3 coordinators that I helped to support. And I went and I was managing 21 instructional coaches across 13 middle schools in our nation's capital. To say I was scared going into that job was an understatement because it was so different from anything I had ever done. But I was excited and I was curious and I was looking forward to all of the opportunities. And I knew I wasn't going to screw up. I had a very contentious conversation one day, less than 2 months after I started my job with the principal at a middle school. And to say it was a difficult conversation was it's just an understatement. It was one of the most difficult conversations I've ever had. And it was literally like both of us were bulls getting ready to charge and attack each other because he didn't see me, I didn't see him. We then saw each other and didn't like what we saw in each other, and it was ugly. And I said something that was very direct and very stern about a position that I needed to uphold for the office that I was working in. And the conversation ended with something like, we're not done here. And I said, you're right, we're not. And so I went back to the office, and my deputy chief, who I just adore, she's amazing. I walked into her office and I closed her door and I said, you may need to fire me. And she said, okay. And I told her the story. And she looked at me and she said, welcome to DC Public Schools. She said, exactly what you did and you standing up for what's right is one of the reasons why I wanted you to come work for us. I was prepared to go in there and be like, look, if you're going to fire me, fire me. I will find another job down here. I will make it work. But I was going to be grateful for every single experience I got. And the 14 months that I spent at DC Public Schools were some of the best work I've ever done. I loved working there and the people I got to work with and the experiences I had, the good ones and the quote unquote not so good ones. But when we leave, we need to be grateful for everything we have learned in that job because we are taking it to the next. I say all the time, we are here in this moment because of the totality of our experiences. If we do not honor those experiences, we are missing golden opportunities for how we inform, perform, and how we show up in all of these situations. So fast forward a couple of jobs. I go to work for an educational nonprofit. Another great organization, great people, great clients, really enjoyed my time there. And I found myself moving through different positions and leveling up each time until we had a second reorg. And knowing what we have been following in the news recently about Twitter and the massive layoffs and all, it's brought up a lot of memories for me about that particular reorg because it wasn't fun for me. I had been through a reorg at DC Public Schools that was pretty rough. Here I was now on my third reorg. And as a school teacher, you're not used to that kind of stress because you have your job, you go in and do it. And if you're not tenured, you wait till around like May 15th when you get word you're coming back and you roll with it. It's one of the rare jobs where you go in and unless you really screw up, you have a job for the whole year. And so I go through the second reorg and I do not land well. I just don't. And it was very apparent that the work I wanted to do was not going to happen there. And at first, I will admit I was really bitter and angry because why is it that you're telling me that my work isn't what you want? I can do some great things. I can help you out. And so now you're putting me in this lane that isn't very wide and telling me to do this thing, which I will gladly do, but it's not what I want to do. And I couldn't help but think where I landed was an action on leadership's part to be like, he'll leave. That happens sometimes. I don't know if that's true or not. It's my own speculation on the whole situation, but I certainly wasn't happy. And when you're not happy, it's very easy to be angry. In a previous episode, I had shared with you about quiet quitting, and there were moments there where I felt like I was just going to come in, do the bare minimum. That was going to be it. And I was going to leave. You weren't getting any extra time from me. You weren't getting any extra hours from me. I wasn't going, quote unquote, above and beyond. I was angry. I was disappointed because I knew, at least from my lens, I was undervalued and underutilized. And what hurt even more was that I was stuck. I landed at this place on the org chart where I really had nowhere to go. It would have taken a huge pivot in work responsibilities and role if they were even going to allow me that opportunity. It's why when I talk to you on this podcast and I bring in guests and we talk about this theme about being stuck, undervalued, and underutilized, it is so important to me because, my friends, I have walked that walk with you. I have been there. I have been the frustrated, unhappy employee who wants more and refuses to settle, but is unsure at the moment about what move is going to be next. Took a lot of time. And one of the things, and it's part of the reason why I mentioned Richard at the beginning of this podcast, because as I was going through this transition at work and I had been going for my coaching certification, there were moments when he would look at me and he would say to me, "You're going to make the right decision." And I always appreciated how he said that because he was giving me the space to figure it out. He's like, whatever you got to do, you're going to make the right decision. Whether it's a spouse, partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, whomever that is in our lives, we are blessed when we have someone like that who has the absolute trust and faith that we are going to make the right decision. And I appreciated so much that he wasn't telling me what to do. He was giving me space to figure it out. And everything had kind of come to a head at work. I just couldn't keep it in anymore. And I walked into my vice president's office one day and I asked her if I could have a conversation with her about my career path. And she was busy at her desk and she was doing a couple things. She said, yeah. And I closed the door and I said to her, whatever you say to me, the first thing I'm going to say to you is thank you. That was how I knew I was going to come from a place of gratitude. That whatever it was she was going to tell me, I was going to thank her for being honest with me, for telling me what I was going to ask her. She was going to give me the answer. And what I said to her was this: given the recent reorganization, I'm trying to figure out where my career path here. And the only thing I can consider it here is that it is at best horizontal. While I'm not at risk of getting fired today, the truth of the matter is I can't bring an internal coaching program here. I am stuck in this lane to do my job responsibilities, which was onboarding and training, which I really enjoyed. And I said, there is really no path for me here to grow in the way that I want. And so what I see from all of that means is that I'm not in a place where I'm promotable. I'm never going to get a bonus. If I get a raise, it's the bare minimum. And then I asked her this question: how right am I? Imagine saying something like that to your boss. You put every single card out on the table and then you ask them, how right am I? She took her pen, she slammed it down on the table, and she goes, John, they don't get you. They don't get what you do and how you coach people and you keep them from leaving and all the things that you do day in and day out. They just don't understand what it is that you do. And there was this pause, and she looked at me and she said, you're very smart. And at that point, I wanted to go for the joke because I diffuse tense situations at times with humor. And I didn't. And I went back to how I promised her how I was going to show up and the ground rule I set. And I looked at her and I said, thank you. I was so grateful for that conversation. She gave me the exact information I needed to hear. She didn't sugarcoat it. She didn't hold back. The amazing leader that she is, she told me exactly what I needed to hear, even if it was not what I wanted to hear. I left her office, and a few weeks later, I resigned. And it was 5 years ago this month that those conversations happened. And I remember when I walked into her office to tell her I was resigning, I used this phrase. It is with a lot of gratitude for my time here that I'm going to leave and open my coaching practice full time because I can help more people outside of this organization than I can inside of it. That, my friends, is what brought me to opening my coaching practice full time. It is what almost 2 years ago started this podcast. And it is why each week I come to you from a place of value and service to help you navigate your career path more than ever before. It is why this work is so important to me, because I never want any of you to feel stuck, undervalued, or underutilized. Because one of the biggest pain points that happen at mid-career is that we never want to settle because we know we are capable of more. But there's family obligations and financial obligations that oftentimes hold us back from getting the clarity we need to decide what exactly it is we want to do with our professional lives to help make our personal lives that much better. As much as we want to keep them separate and compartmentalize our personal and professional lives, the truth of the matter is they meld and they mesh together. I left my job on December 3rd, 2016, 2017. 2017. I always get that year wrong. I left my job on December 3rd, 2017. And when I came home that day, I sat here thinking about I was going to take 4 weeks off before I started my business full time. But Richard and I went out to dinner that night to celebrate. And he looked at me and he said, I am so proud of you. What you did took guts and courage. And I made a promise to you that I was never, ever going to tell you to quit your job. But there were 3 times I got really close. But I knew you were going to make the best decision for you. And I am here for you to support you in this business. And I'm excited to see what you get to do with it. This Thanksgiving, I want to offer you a moment to pause and be grateful for your husband, wife, partner, significant other, whomever it is in your life that is there walking alongside of you, to turn to them and thank them for the amazing person they are, and honoring how they support you in your work. And I hope you are doing the same for them, if not more. And I also want you to take a moment to pause and be thankful for the job that you have that allows you to keep the roof over your head, to work with the people you do each and every day, to get those experiences you get that you are going to leverage into whatever position is next, whether it is inside of your company or outside of it. There is so much to be grateful for this Thanksgiving when it comes to our work lives. And I am especially grateful for you putting me in your ears each week and spending some time with me. Whether you are a current client of mine, you are a past client, or you are a future client of mine, I am excited to get to talk to you and meet you and work with you, or even just to be with you in whatever capacity it is along this professional journey. Whether you're on my email list, you listen to the podcast, we're connected on LinkedIn, you follow me on social, whatever that is, I am honored that I get to spend some time with you, and I get to help you build your mid-career GPS to whatever is next. My friends, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. If you are new to this podcast, please go and visit johnnerrell.com for more information. You can also download my free guide that is there. You can follow me on social at John Nerrell Coaching. Certainly connect with me on LinkedIn. I wish you and your family and your loved ones a happy, safe, and blessed Thanksgiving. And I will be back in your ears next week. But until then, my friends, remember this. We build our mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how we show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. Happy Thanksgiving. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, follow on Apple Podcasts or wherever you usually listen. And I'd appreciate it if you would leave a rating and review. Visit johnnerrell.com to download your free copy of the 55-minute career transition jumpstart to help you start building your mid-career GPS. And don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Nerrell Coaching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.